welcome to Money Go Round. Today we're going to examine the way we feed our pets. Last year in Britain we spent a total of £220 million on all kinds of different cat foods and dog foods, and we're likely to spend more this year. £85 million was spent on canned dog foods, £57 million on canned cat food, and £7 million on dried cat foods.
But the prices of these pet foods range from 16 pence for a tin of dog food like this one of Chappie to 24.5 pence for a tin of Spiller's Choice Cuts like that. There's quite a difference between the prices of the various brands. So is it worth buying the more expensive pet foods? Well, here once again I've been joined by our tasting panel, and I'd like to explain to you our test. We're going to give our tasting panel a bowl of the same cheap dog food and a bowl of the same expensive dog food. We'll be coming back to see which ones they prefer. So, Panda, come back. There you are. Tuck into that. Come on, Errol. There we go. Well, it's going down well. Let's go back to Joan.
We'll leave them to munch away there, and we'll be returning to the test and to the question of cost later on. If we look at canned dog food, we find that on most of the tins that are sold, meat is on the list of ingredients, and it's usually placed at the top of the list. Sometimes, in fact, the labels on the tins give even more detail. Spillers actually go so far as to call one of their more expensive brands Choice Cuts, and they describe it as a chunky meat food. But what's in the tin? Well, the list of ingredients says meat, ground bone, vegetable protein, meat byproducts, etc. In fact, it would seem that there's not much variation between the ingredients of one make and another. Pedigree Chum, another expensive tin of dog food, list much the same ingredients as Choice Cuts: meat, vegetable protein, freshly ground bone, meat byproducts. It all sounds very nice for the dogs. There seems to be plenty of meat in these tins. But what exactly does meat mean?
Well, as far as pet foods go, there is no legal definition of meat. However, the pet food manufacturers have a voluntary code of practice which defines meat as meat, including fat, skin, rind, gristle and sinew in amounts normally associated with the flesh used, plus liver, kidney, heart, cured meat, tails, sweetbread, tripe, lungs, tongues, maws, melts and udders.
You name it, it looks as though it's all meat to the dog food manufacturers. So we decided to have 4 tins of canned dog food analysed by a public analyst, Mr. Barnett of Acton. That's a tin of Choice Cuts, a tin of Meaty Bonus, a tin of Chum and a tin of Bounce. And we asked Mr. Barnett to tell us exactly what kind of meat was in each tin. And he said of Choice Cuts, whose ingredients list meat, ground bone, vegetable protein, meat byproducts, he said, and I quote, approximately 50% of the meaty lumps consisted of lung tissue, the remainder being meat offals which could not be identified. No meat of muscle origin was detected. Of Bonus, whose ingredients list meat, byproducts, vegetable protein, etc., he said, all of the meaty material appeared to be lung tissue. No meat of muscle origin was detected. Of Chum, whose list of ingredients start meat, vegetable protein, fresh ground bone, meat byproducts, he said, this consisted of at least 40% lung tissue and 50% offals, which could not be identified with certainty. He added, possibly much of it was also lung tissue, and Mr. Barnett continued, approximately 5 to 10% of liver was present. No meat of muscle origin was detected. Finally, Mr. Barnett analysed Bounce, whose ingredients again list meat and meat byproducts. Mr. Barnett said nearly all of the meaty material was lung tissue. No meat of muscle origin was detected.
Dr. Walker, when we talk about meat of muscle origin, that is what you and I would understand by meat if we were to sit down at dinner in a lump of
a joint and that sort of thing, yeah.
Given that, is it really fair to call lung meat?
I think it's perfectly fair if it's understood between the various people concerned. Housewives do not expect to find prime steak in a tin of dog food. They know how much it costs, and it's not reasonable for it to be there, and the industry's researched this, and this is so. The industry is governed by the Trade Descriptions Act and mustn't mislead the public. But of course, most important of all, these products are highly nutritious. And in fact, the carnivore in nature, the wild carnivores, tend to eat the offal, what we discard, in preference to the muscle meat frequently, particularly the liver and the stomach, the tripe.
Now, you have raised there the question of the Trade Descriptions Act, and it is perfectly true that you haven't been prosecuted under it, but don't you feel that it is somewhat misleading for all the television commercials that we see and the advertisements in the newspapers and magazines in which many of these dog food products are advertised in a way that suggests that when you open the tin, a stream of lumps, which I must say look very much like stewing steak, land in the dog's dish. But don't you find that at all worrying?
I think it used to be a little more worrying than it is now, because I think by now the housewife knows the price of meat better in these hard times and knows that this is not stewing steak and is not fillet steak.
All right, fair enough. Well, let's go across to Mr. Finlay now. Do you think that pieces of lung, which is after all what we're talking about, provide a suitable and nutritious diet for dogs?
As a basis for a diet, yes, this is the case. I have every confidence that that animals will survive and thrive well on this as a basic protein intake. Where the advantage comes, if the average housewife went out, or pet owner, shall we say, goes out to the butcher to buy lung tissue, it requires, as a basis of a diet, to be balanced with various other requirements. This is what one finds in the convenience pack, if you like, of the tinned food. This is already done for them, whereas if you went out shopping to buy the fresh meat, you're going to have to go around several shops and get vitamin tablets and so on to add to it to make up to a complete diet. But as a basis, yes, it is fine.
Dr. Walker, would it really detract so much from the glamour of your products if you actually called it lung on the label?
I don't think so, but it's a matter for the marketing people, and they worry about this endlessly. They spend hours worrying about it. I think, quite frankly, I might as well. But it's all right that it's called meat. There is a code of practice that clearly writes it down. The government knows about that. It's not an official document, but it's aware of its existence, and it is accepted.
But nevertheless, you personally would like to see, shall we say, a shade more honest description on the label?
I wouldn't like the word honest, but
right.
I mean, call a spade a spade. Why not? Everybody knows that it's offal. You can't afford to feed the best steak.
All right, thank you very much indeed. Well, let's now talk about the cost and see which pet foods our tasting panel actually preferred, the expensive ones or the cheap ones.
Well, here they are, gobbling away. And do you know that to a man, they are all choosing the expensive bowl? So Errol, Claude, Suki and Panda have all chosen the expensive dish of dog food. I think that's what you call totally irrefutable evidence that they have expensive tastes. OK, back to you, Tony.
Oh, I don't know, Jan, we've always attracted a better class of dog on this programme. And now, here are the major manufacturers' brands that are on the market. There are over 20 different brands of cat and dog food available, and some have up to 5 different flavours. And as we've seen before, their prices vary tremendously. At the cheaper end, for instance, we have things like Chappie at 16.5 pence, and we have Bonus Cat at 17.5 pence. There they are. At the more expensive end of the range, we have products like Pedigree Chum at 24.5 pence and Whiskers Super Meat at 26.5 pence. Now, although they may all taste different to your dog or to your cat, it's your purse that'll really feel the difference too. Because let's say you've got a Labrador eating, shall we say, 2 tins of dog food a day. Now, if you feed him Chappie, it'll cost you 33 pence a day. That's £120 and 45 pence over the year. While if you feed him choice cuts, you'll be spending 49 pence a day. That adds up to £178, 85 pence a year. Now, that's a difference of 16 pence a day, or £58, 40 pence in an entire calendar year. So, let's go back to Dr. Walker and ask you, Dr. Walker, why you think there is any justification at all in providing different brands of dog food, but more importantly than that, brands of dog food or cat food at widely different prices when, as we've seen from the analyst report and indeed from the ingredients on the tins, they seem to contain much the same sort of things.
Well, I think you partly answered the question yourself. It's a matter of acceptability or palatability. In cats in particular are extremely fussy creatures and frequently won't eat a food although it's extremely nutritious. And the more highly priced brands on the market are more palatable, as your little test had just shown, though that's with dogs. You find the same thing with cats. And you've also got to satisfy the owner's tastes as well. Although they will always say it doesn't matter what it looks like as long as the animal likes it, it just isn't true.
But I mean, are you seriously trying to say that let's take 2 tins of cat food, one at 16 and one at 24.
Yeah.
Now, by my sums, that makes 8p difference.
Right.
Do the flavourings really cost 8p?
It isn't the flavourings, it's the raw materials.
It's
the
a better class
ingredients.
of lung tissue.
Well, I don't want to go into full technical detail, but your analyst left wide areas, he said himself, unidentified tissues. These are the meat byproducts. Under that definition which you read
Yeah, yeah.
out, lung is a meat. The meat byproducts are something else.
All right, let's take that as common ground.
Yeah.
Let's go across to Mr. Finlay. Despite what Dr. Walker said, will my dog or cat be better off from eating a more expensive product? Is he being better served nutritionally?
I think that the pet food industry today is such that you can rely entirely on the contents to ensure, if you follow the instructions and the advice given on the labels, that they will be lacking in nothing and that there will be every bit of goodness in the tin and any supplements like biscuit meal or whatever they recommend in the animal's diet. What I would be very wary, and I would like to make a point of this, is that you occasionally get cut price products of a recognisable brand. I would very much advocate that people do stick to well-known branded tins, irrespective of their price. I don't think I would be at all happy about somebody feeding a little-known or an unknown product.
But the British are very fond of their dogs and cats. Is it absolutely obligatory to feed them tinned, canned, proprietary pet food at all? Or are there other things, scraps, for instance?
Oh, indeed. By comparison, the pet food industry is comparatively new, and I would think probably about 25%, I don't know whether Dr. Walker would agree with me, about 25% of animals probably do feed on human meat, sorry, can I rephrase that? Meat for human
Please
consumption, and scraps and so on. But again, we're down to this problem of balancing, because meat is only a source of protein and a few vitamins. There are other things that have to be added to it. We would be more likely to encounter problems of a nutritional origin in the animal, I think, fed rather off the cuff by the owners rather than a prepared food.
Thank you very much indeed.